They erased my name from the company I helped build, labeled me a criminal, framed me for a fraud I tried to expose. But what they didn't know was I kept the original ledger. And when the truth came out, it wouldn't just destroy their empire. It would reveal who really betrayed me. My name is Celeste Howard, a corporate financial controller with 10 years of spotless performance and a billion-dollar tech consultancy called Link. I had always worked in the shadows balancing billion-dollar budgets, controlling leaks, tightening ledgers. I didn't need recognition. I only needed peace. But peace is a luxury when you're the one holding the secrets no one wants revealed. It all began the morning I walked into conference room 7B, holding a USB drive that would become the weapon of my undoing. Link had just gone through a high-stakes acquisition. The air inside the office buzzed with half-hidden smiles, cautious optimism, and the silent undertow of impending restructuring. I wasn't worried, though. Numbers protected me. Integrity protected me. Or so I thought. I had discovered something weeks ago while preparing an internal audit. A transfer for $9 million routed through a dormant vendor account, signed off with authorization codes that didn't make sense. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But then came the second one. Then the third. The trail led to someone deep, someone with power. I didn't know who, not yet. But I had compiled everything: dates, approvals, shell accounts onto a USB. I walked into that meeting not to accuse but to warn. That was my mistake. Sitting across from me were the CFO, Marcus Hale, and the head of legal affairs, Gina Loring. Both had given me their practice smiles as I entered, both pretending nothing was wrong. I had thought we were all on the same side. When I slid the USB across the table, the room fell silent. Before this gets misinterpreted, I had said, I need you to look at this. These transactions don't align with approved budgets. If there's an explanation, I'm open to it. But if this is what I think it is, Marcus didn't look surprised. Gina did, but she masked it well. She leaned forward, brows narrowed. You're accusing someone of financial misconduct? She asked. I'm pointing out irregularities. I'm not naming anyone. That should have been enough. It wasn't. The next day, my access to internal files was revoked. The day after that, I was suspended. By the end of the week, I was terminated. Just like that, the official email said it was a compliance breach involving the unauthorized movement of sensitive data. They accused me of hacking internal systems, tampering with restricted files, violating confidentiality. I had no words. I had trusted the wrong people, and they buried me for it. But what they didn't know was that I didn't give them the only copy. I still had the original drive hidden in a place no audit could reach. I spent the next few weeks holed up in my apartment, blinds shut, phone off, blindsided by silence. I had no job, no allies, and soon, no apartment. My severance had been frozen under investigation. Rent was past due. Friends I had worked beside for years stopped replying to my messages. I had become a virus in their world. A cautionary tale, but one person stayed. Noah Whitaker wasn't just a senior security analyst at Link. He was also the man I had once loved in the quiet way only someone careful with secrets could. We had never crossed lines, just long stares across cubicles, shared elevator silences, the warmth of his voice in late-night department calls. The day I was terminated, he messaged me. I don't believe what they're saying. Meet me tonight. Anywhere. I chose an old bookstore cafe near Grant and Holloway. We sat across from each other, steam rising from untouched mugs. I looked into the firewall reports, he said. You didn't breach anything, but someone used your credentials remotely. Their logs were wiped. That's high-level access, Celeste. So someone planted it? I asked. He nodded. Someone with the power to override security protocols and the incentive to remove you. My hands shook around the cup. Why? Because you were too close. And because someone's laundering money through vendor shells, exactly the type of thing only a financial controller would catch. It all snapped into place. I had been set up, eliminated. Noah leaned in. But it's not over. Not if you still have the drive. I did. I handed it to him under the table, heart pounding. He took it without hesitation. This stays between us, I said. Until we know who we're fighting, he promised. I believed him. The next morning, He was gone. And no texts, no calls, no emails. I went to his apartment. His landlord said he had moved out overnight, left no forwarding address. I tried to tell myself he was scared, that he was protecting himself. But deep down, something else gnawed at me. What if he wasn't who I thought he was? What if the betrayal started with him? The weeks turned into months. I moved to a cheaper apartment. I took freelance accounting gigs under aliases. I became a ghost. But I never stopped tracing the patterns. One name kept reappearing in vendor approvals: Evan Laurel, ActionLink's executive VP of strategic operations. On paper, he had no connection to financial transfers. But behind the scenes, his digital fingerprint was on every redirected fund. And then one day, in the middle of my self-imposed exile, a letter arrived. No return address, no signature, just one sentence printed in block type. You were right. He's coming for you next. There was a folded photograph inside. It was me taken through a window from across the street. My blood ran cold. Someone was watching me. Still, that night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, a bouquet of white chrysanthemums was left at my door. No note, no card. I stared at them for hours before dumping them in the trash. The scent lingered. So did the fear. It was around this time I met Julian Black. He worked at a boutique investigative firm specializing in corporate fraud. I had found him through an encrypted whistleblower forum. He was calm, methodical, and had eyes that didn't flinch at danger. I didn't trust easily anymore. But I gave him enough to prove my story, enough to let him help me dig deeper. And that's when everything shifted. Julian uncovered a second set of vendor accounts tied not just to Evan Laurel but to an offshore holding group named Central Solutions, registered under a series of blind trusts. All roads led back to Evan's private wealth manager, a woman named Lyra Kent. But it wasn't just money. It was data, employee information, client contracts, medical records. Everything was being siphoned off and monetized. And someone inside ActionLink was orchestrating it all. Julian leaned back, hands steepled. This goes deeper than fraud. This is criminal racketeering. And you, Celeste, were the first crack in their firewall. So what do we do? I asked. He gave me a thin smile. We expose them, but on our terms. Together, we began laying the trap. And then, just when we thought we had control, Julian disappeared. No message, no clue. Just like Noah. And this time, they came for me. They didn't knock. They broke the door down. By their empire. It would reveal who really betrayed me. The crash of my apartment door splintering apart still rings in my head like a fire alarm. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't announce themselves. 3 men in black coats stormed in, one grabbing me by the arms, the other rifling through my drawers. I screamed, kicked, tried to escape. But the third shoved me against the wall so hard the air snapped out of my lungs. My wrists were zip-tied. My laptop smashed. Every paper, every flash drive, every backup I'd stashed taken. One of them looked at me, his voice low. You were warned. Then they left. No badge, no explanation, just fear, thick as smoke, left behind in the air. I lay on the floor for hours after that, afraid to move. Every inch of me ached. My ribs throbbed. My soul burned. The police didn't come. No neighbors reported anything. It was like I had been erased before they even stepped inside. That was the moment I realized I couldn't run anymore. I had already lost everything: my job, my friends, my safety, maybe even Julian, but not my will. They thought they had silenced me, but I still had one thing left: myself. The next day, I found a dusty storage unit on the outskirts of town under a fake name, and paid in cash. I moved what little I had left, some old files I'd hidden in cloud storage, and the printed audit pages Julian once helped me map out. The rest was gone, but I still had enough to be dangerous. I set up a burner laptop. I rebuilt the timelines. I traced wire transfers. And then I saw new activity in the shell accounts. They had gotten bold. Another $12.3 million was being moved into Central Solutions. They were accelerating the scheme. I needed leverage, I needed someone they couldn't see coming. So I reached out to someone I had sworn never to contact again. My sister. Her name is Mia. We hadn't spoken in nearly 5 years. Not since she walked out of our mother's funeral with dry eyes and never looked back. But Mia worked at a private investment firm that once partnered with ActionLink. She had access to databases I couldn't reach. And I knew something she didn't. Her firm was being used as a cleanup vault for Evan Laurel's dirty money. When she saw the documents I sent, she didn't believe it at first. Why would they use my firm? She asked. Because they think no one's watching. Because you're clean. Because they trust your silence. It took 2 days before she called. Again, her voice was different. You were right. There's a flagged transaction from someone named Lyra Kent. My boss told me not to question it. Can you get me evidence? She hesitated. I could lose everything. I already did. The line went quiet. Then she spoke. Come to New York. I'll meet you in person. I boarded a bus the next morning. I didn't sleep the whole ride. I kept checking my phone. Still no sign of Julian. Still nothing from Noah. I tried to focus, to prepare myself. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the bouquet of chrysanthemums, the photograph, the men in black coats, and in my chest, the growing fear that maybe this wasn't about money anymore. Maybe it never was. Mia met me in a small bar in the East Village, her black trench coat soaked from the rain. She looked thinner, worn down, but when she hugged me, something in me cracked. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have believed you. We sat in the back corner. She opened her bag and slid a folder across the table. Wire confirmation, authorization emails, internal memos. All of it traces back to Evan. And Lyra's name is all over it. I held the folder in trembling hands. This is enough to open a federal investigation. She nodded. There's more. My boss, he's been in contact with someone at ActionLink directly. A man named, she paused, Julian Black. I froze. What? He's not an investigator. He's a consultant for ActionLink, under contract. The air left my lungs. I stood up, heart pounding. The walls spun. Celeste, wait, she said. I stumbled out onto the street. The wind slapped my face like ice. Julian lied. He had planned it all, gained my trust, used me to get the files. Then it disappeared. I leaned against a brick wall, dizzy. I had trusted him. I had believed in him. Twice now. I had handed everything I had to men who smiled at me like they meant it. Never again. I stayed in a motel that night, unable to sleep. I stared at the folder, thinking of what to do next. I could go to the press, but they'd bury the story. I could call the authorities, but without proof of the internal sabotage, they'd say I was a disgruntled employee. No. I needed something undeniable. Something they couldn't erase. So I made a plan. The next morning, I called the one person who had ghosted me first. Noah. I left one voicemail. If you ever meant anything you said, meet me at 4th and Mercer tonight. If not, I'll assume you were part of it all. I waited 6 hours. He showed up, older, tired, haunted. I ran because they threatened my sister, he said. They knew I helped you. They said she'd disappear. And Julian? I asked. I tried to warn you about him. He was planted months ago. You were the target. Why? Noah's jaw tightened. Because you're not just a whistleblower. You're the only one who knows about the missing file. What missing file? He looked at me. The real ledger. There had been a secret third copy of the vendor payment file. A complete transaction history hidden by ActionLink's original founder, Howard Langston. Before he died under mysterious circumstances, everyone thought it was lost. But I had found traces of it buried in ActionLink's archival database, encrypted, forgotten. Julian knew. They all did. And now, they were trying to find it before I did. I went back to my storage unit and began decrypting the remaining fragments I'd saved. It took days, red-eye nights, coffee-induced headaches, then one breakthrough. The original vendor registry, every false payment, every rerouted account, every offshore transfer. It was all there. And one name that appeared over 200 times. Gina. Loring, not Evan. She had used his name as cover, but she had been the architect. Evan was a pawn. Julian was the broker. And Gina had orchestrated it all from legal affairs, where no one ever looks for fraud. She had pinned it on me because I was the only one smart enough to uncover it. She had even played Evan. And he didn't know. That was when I made my final move. I mailed a copy of the decrypted ledger directly to Evan's estate. No name, no note, just the file. And I waited. 3 days later, Evan Laurel held a surprise press conference. He announced his resignation, and then he named names. The media exploded. Gina Loring was arrested. So was Lyra Kent. Internal investigations revealed layers of corruption. I watched it unfold on a flickering motel TV, curled up in a blanket, numb. Julian's face never appeared. Neither did Noah's. I was never mentioned. That was exactly how I wanted it. Weeks later, I received a final letter in the mail. The envelope had no return address. Inside, a single photograph.